This is a tribute to George Verwer, who passed away on the 14th of April. Many years ago, I was somehow on the mailing list for Operation Mobilisation. I received the monthly letter. Now, I should add that when I was a student in halls of residence, the block warden, who was next to my room, used to get cassette tapes from a ministry called Things That Matter. I was very interested in these cassette tapes, so one day I asked him where he got them from. He gave me the address. I didn't know that by doing so I was making contact with Operation Mobilisation, because the tape lending library was called Things That Matter and was not identified as a ministry of Operation Mobilisation. Now, I might add too that over the years I started 2 applications for OM and pulled out of both of them. But as I say, I was in receipt of the monthly newsletter. One day it arrived and I set it aside, but I had this overwhelming feeling that I should open it. So anyway, I opened it and there was a list of jobs that they were looking for people for, and I prayed for other people to go and join Operation Mobilisation. Well, you know what the answer to that prayer was. The following month, the letter arrived again, and this time they had job details, and I realised I could do one of those jobs. I didn't have one in mind in particular, but I thought on this occasion I need to go forward with it. I should also say that I'd applied to a number of other missions and been turned down, or as I say, I'd pulled out of Operation Mobilisation twice. So I applied, and the long and the short of it is, I came down for interview, and in the process of being interviewed, I prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, you know how many times I've been turned down by mission societies, or I've pulled out. It's a very hurtful process. This is the last time I'm doing this. I can't go on like this. Well, God took me at my word. It was the last application indeed, because here I am. Well, when I got started, there came a point where I, with a number of others, went to the place at Hales Owen, and George Verwer was the speaker, so I met him for the first time. This was one of many times. There was another occasion where he asked me if I would go up to Manchester to a particular church and stand in for the gopher selling his books. So I did. Now, George was concerned about people, and as I stood behind that desk, I could see that there were 3 boys who were interested in some of these very cheap books, but they didn't have any money. George also spotted the boys and said to the boys, these are free. And he looked at me and he said, these are free. It was far more important to him that these boys got these books and learned from them than it was to have money for them. I also met him on the Logos 2, where he introduced me to people, and some of these people subsequently became my friends. George would sometimes send me books that he thought I ought to have, and I appreciate that, and he also gave me a world map jacket. That's going to stop, of course. There'll be no more books from George Verwer, there'll be no world maps, and yet he has influenced thousands of people, brought them into missions because of his own example. He provided the means for other people to get into mission and do what they are best at. And he always said to us that he wasn't interested in hanging on to people. If they wanted to go off and do something else, that was fine by him. But for a period, they spent time with us gaining experience. And I've met many of those people. And it's been good for me to be in Operation Mobilisation. George Verwer proved to be a man of prayer, a man of the word, and a motivator, and he motivated people like me. And as I say, when I made my very first contact with OM, I had no idea I was contacting OM directly for the first time. We have no idea what the future may hold, but the work will continue. We are going through a phase of adjusting to being without the founder, George Verwer. But I loved him, and I appreciate everything he did for me and everything he did for many others, and trust that God has said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into my kingdom."